Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Pros, save more on the materials you need to get the job done, inside and out, at Lowe's. Right now, get 10% off in-stock Trex Naturals decking, now available in more styles. Plus, get 15% off select custom entry, interior, and storm doors. Then, we'll deliver it all straight to your job site to help keep your jobs moving. Get the brands pros trust, priced right, and ready when you need them. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 5/27. While supplies last, selection varies by location.
Hey guys, welcome to You the Boss podcast, episode 60. I'm your host, Pam, and today we're going to be talking about rebuilding alignment after burnout. To get started, I wanted to define what burnout means. As per Google, it is a state of extreme exhaustion, physically, emotionally, and mentally due to chronic stress. Burnout can occur in a lot of different places, and it often sneaks up on us, and it's crucial for us to make sure that we're rebuilding at this point. So in this episode, we're going to talk about burnout. We're going to, like I just did, we defined it. So I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to give you some ways that it shows up. And then I'm also going to pivot a little bit, and I'm going to show you examples. I should say give you examples if you're not watching this, but I'm going to give you examples and different ways that you're able to recognize burnout, and also what you can do once, you're getting through that burnout. I'm sure, like many of you, I've experienced burnout. I've experienced it when I was working full time, I was going to school full time, and then I was trying to lead a social life. I was in my 20s, and though it was a temporary time in my life, I was trying to do 100 things at once. I started a business in the process of all this, and I realized I couldn't focus on anything. I couldn't focus at work. I couldn't focus in school. I couldn't focus on my social life. And I realized that I needed to very quickly change something so that I could keep going with everything that I was doing and not quit everything. I did an episode previous to this one, and it was titled Vision Fatigue. And I received a lot of feedback from a lot of you talking about like, wow, like I couldn't verbalize that. I couldn't put a name to it. And while I was writing that episode, it occurred to me that, vision fatigue is not the only kind of fatigue that we experience. That burnout is something that we've become a little bit too comfortable with naming, but not necessarily doing anything about it. So I wanted to share with you first what some symptoms of burnout can look like, and giving you kind of an understanding of that. For starters, there's about 5 or 6 symptoms, I would say, of burnout. And that can look like chronic exhaustion. Maybe it doesn't matter how much sleep you get or how much rest you get. You just feel tired. Something else that can be is, maybe you're feeling cynical about your job. Maybe it's just like, the 9 to 5 grind. And maybe it used to be something that you're passionate about, and now you're just kind of look more cynical about it. It can also look like being detached from daily tasks. And physically, maybe you have persistent headaches, you have insomnia, you're not able to, whenever you lay down, you feel so exhausted, but you're not able to fall asleep. These are some symptoms of burnout. And a lot of the commonality behind this is it's coming from a place of basically you're overworking. You're not aligned in your values with what it is that you're doing, whether you're full-time working for someone else, you have a business, you're doing both. You're not aligned in the values with that, and you have poor boundaries and you're lacking support. Obviously the poor boundaries thing, it's another one of those things that has more recently in our social circles, whether that's online or in person at work or all of those places, we're lacking boundaries. One of the great things of technology is that we are consistently connected. We are consistently able to be reached. We are consistently able to keep up with what's going on across the world, whether that's through a news channel or it's through acknowledging something online or email. And I think that can also be a hindrance to us. There isn't a boundary. We millennials make the joke that, call me after 9 because that was when minutes used to be free. Now you have unlimited minutes. So people can call you all day, every day. And it's time that we kind of start to circulate that and recognize that this is not a way of living to be consistently connected this way and to be consistently not having those boundaries. And just to put it out there, society pressures, hustle culture, maybe you're working full time and building a business. I've said this before on this podcast, and I will say it 100 more times. Hustle culture is dead. Hustle culture has been dead for a long time. And it's not healthy to always be hustling. And you might be listening to this and you're saying, I don't agree. And you shouldn't. You shouldn't agree with everything that I say. I'm not saying that hustle culture temporarily is not great. With everything that you want to accomplish, there is a temporary bubble where you need to absolutely 100% hustle and pour into this. That is just a fact. Anything that you want to accomplish is not easily done. Over the last year, I can give you the example. Over the last year, I moved to a different state and I became a parent, and I also became a homeowner. And so there is a portion of becoming a parent where you are in the newborn stage. So that first couple of months where your baby is eating every 2 to 3 hours, where you're not sleeping 9 hours a night. They're not sleeping 8, 9 hours a night. And in fact, they might wake up in the middle of the night and stay awake for a few hours. That is a small portion of time where you are essentially hustling with your newborn. Another example that I can give you, which is a live situation happening for me, my husband still works in the state that we used to live in, and he has been commuting to that state Monday through Friday, sometimes facing traffic, sometimes facing different highway issues that have been happening. If you're on the East Coast, you know that Route 80 has been hot mess express. And that is not the way of life that we want to live. So temporarily, he has been commuting back and forth, but he's been moving other pieces in his resume and his network and using different facets of things, because in the long term, he knows that he's not going to be commuting full time, but he also has learned to have that boundary. And society wise, we've become a little too comfortable with making that hustle an extended period of time, as opposed to it being a temporary bubble. Sometimes it doesn't have an end date, but when you recognize that it is temporary, that's very important to point out. But all of a sudden, we're just living in a constant hustle. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay for you to be working 40, 50 hours a week at your job, and then you come home and work another 30, 40 in your business. In your business that's supposed to be replacing your job, by the way, not becoming something in addition to. And now you're feeling societal pressures of like, well, now you also need to go on vacation. Now you need to, not only are you working your 40 hours a week at your job, you're working your 20, 30 hours in your business. And now on top of that, you are showing up to all of your kids' games, which, by the way, there's not enough time in the day for you to do all the things that I just mentioned. So you're obviously going to be pulling from somewhere. You're going to be pouring from an empty cup. And you're feeling like, well, you're not a good parent if you're not showing up to your kids' games and all their events. And you're also not a good entrepreneur if you're, turning away clients because you're feeling like you need to fill your family cup. And if you're calling out of work because you're sick, because you are doing all these other things, now you're not showing up at work and you're worried about what your boss is going to do. I'm here to just acknowledge to you that, number one, you've brought this upon yourself. That's okay. It is not weak to acknowledge and hold yourself accountable. Number two, burnout is not a weakness. It is a signal that change needs to be made. I'm going to repeat that to you. Burnout is not a weakness. It is a signal that change needs to be made. Like I mentioned before, you're not aligning in your values. You're not having boundaries. You're not supposed to be connected in your business, from the time that someone wakes up until the time they go to sleep. Maybe your business hours are from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Maybe, you don't think that you should be accessible after 3 p.m. even, because you know that you're going to go pick up your kids from school. So you have to draw certain lines. Maybe you need to break up your hours throughout the day and say, you know what, I'm going to work from 10 to 1. And then after the kids go to bed, I'm going to work from 8 to 10, just on a temporary basis so that you can have the boundaries. The point is in burnout is that you're not aligned in your values to what it is that you're doing and that you have poor boundaries. And I did mention before that there is a lack of support. We will touch on that a little bit as well. So what's happening after the aftermath of burnout? You're emotionally and physically, there's a toll. You're exhausted. You feel like crying. You can't fall asleep when you want to fall asleep. You feel tired. Maybe your appetite isn't good, so you're choosing junk food. Maybe you're gaining some weight. Emotionally, you're stressed. You're lashing out at your partner. You're lashing out at your kids. You're lashing out at your coworkers because, again, you're in this turmoil of being emotionally and physically exhausted. You're confused. You have a loss of identity. There's a disconnect with what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. And there is this place for this where once you realize that you're in burnout, it's like even more exhausting because you have to figure out like, what now? Like, what am I supposed to do now? And maybe it's not enough for you to have a spa day and go get a massage. Maybe there's more work that needs to be done in this environment. It's no longer, oh, I just need a good night's rest. Now you need to redirect yourself, or maybe your directions aren't clear. So maybe you need to clear some of that up. So I'm going to give you guys a kind of like a step-by-step of how to rebuild and in your alignment after burnout. And I do want to preface this by saying, as always, I am not a mental health professional. I am an advocate for therapy, and if you are ever looking for guidance on that, I can help you with that. But I also want to say that I'm not coming at you soft with this. Rebuilding alignment step by step is not going to be a one and done situation. It's not going to be an easy situation because you've already put yourself in a burnout place, which means that now you need to pull yourself out of it. So number one, you need to pause and reflect. You need to ask yourself, what matters to me now that maybe didn't matter to me before? Maybe you've been doing a certain amount of hustling for, let's say, 3 months. Let's give it a 90-day period. And you realize that this isn't working sustainably. Maybe you've dropped a few things. Maybe you've missed a few events because you miscalculated your time. Maybe you've just put too much on your plate that you're not able to consume. So ask yourself, what matters to me now? I do recommend journaling, but sometimes it's just a matter of talking to yourself out loud, having these self-reflective questions of saying, what is mattering to me now? What didn't matter to me before that does? Or what used to matter to me that no longer does? Number two, you have to redefine success. The popular statement of success is that, you have a lot of money, You have a lot of things. And transparently, that is not my definition of success. And maybe to you going through this realignment process of burnout, you need to redefine that success. You need to let go of the external like metrics of what people are measuring success to. Maybe you need to let go some of that and again, reconnecting to your internal values. Maybe that means success to you is just having time and money to spend the way you want to spend it. Maybe there's a portion of the week that you absolutely devote to what it is that needs to be done that gives you that time and that money. So you need to ask yourself those redefining questions of what is success to you. Number 3, you have to create a new vision. You need to look at your short term, you need to look at your long term, and you need to map that out. And you need to recognize that your short term doesn't have to be your long term. Technically, your short term should be what propels you towards your long term. They work hand in hand. And if in the short term you need to have a burst of energy, you need to have a burst of this one specific thing so that long term you can do X, Y, Z, you need to be able to recreate a vision. You need to be able to remap out your steps in the direction that you're going to. Number 4, you need to build gentle structure. So what I mean by that is you have to look at your routines, and it might not be time for you to have a rigid schedule right now. Right now, maybe you need to have a few things that you absolutely do in your routine. And then after that, you maybe have to weave in a couple of things that are interchangeable, but again, it's just like a softer thing. And I don't mean the cliche of like a quote unquote soft life, though I think that has its own place, of course. But just having yourself have kind of like a sustainable routine. Sustainable meaning you can do it as a habit continuously and it doesn't disrupt your day entirely if it doesn't get done. You are at a point in your life right now that you don't have to think about breathing, you don't have to think about brushing your teeth, and you don't have to think about using the bathroom. Those 3 things are sustainable. You need one of them to live, literally. And the other 2 are, yes, interchangeable, but they are still part of your routine that you don't even think about. So that's the kind of routine that you have to build when it comes to sustainable routines. And still under number 4, you have to introduce boundaries and non-negotiables. You have to say to yourself, okay, I know for sure that I am going to run my business between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. And those 3 hours I am dedicating to phone calls, returning messages, returning emails, making sure that I set myself up over the next couple of days I know that on Saturday I'm going to be completely disconnected. So I need to make the boundary of, I'm sorry, I'm not reachable between 5 and 8. You need to make those non-negotiables. And the reason that is that helps you with your routine. It helps you with your schedule, but it also helps set you up to know that there's going to come a moment where it's okay. It's out of my hands. It's done. I don't need to be invested in that anymore after such and such time. Number 5, you need to basically redo with intention. And what that means is when you're coming out of burnout and you're reestablishing yourself, basically, you want to return to your commitments slowly. You don't want to say, you know what, I feel better. I know what I'm doing. I'm redirecting myself, and you're going to take on 1,000 things at once. You need to do it slowly. You need to walk and say, if you're saying yes to something, you need to realize, is this aligning with my why? And your why can look very different, and I can do an episode on that at some point later in the future. But you want to make sure that what you're saying yes to is aligned to the life that you want to live. So are you putting yourself in uncomfortable places just because you need to show up? Are you just taking on commitments just because? Does it mean anything to you when you're taking on these different commitments? You want to return to work slowly. When you haven't worked out in a year, you don't go to the gym tomorrow and lift up 100 pounds. because your body, if you can lift that 100 pounds, your body's going to be screaming at you the next day, which takes you out of commission for a while, out of the gym again. But you also aren't going to feel good if you're not able to lift that 100 pounds. So that makes it harder for you to return to getting back to a consistent workout routine. And lastly, I want to remind you that going through burnout is not necessarily because you've made a mistake. It's not necessarily because you've done something so horribly wrong and now you're like this failure. It's just a way that you're able to teach yourself lessons and get through this kind of recovery period. It's not a way for you to look down on yourself. It's not a way for you to have an accountability to a default. It is just a way for you to learn some lessons, pick yourself up and say, okay, now I get to realign myself. I get to redo this thing so that I can continue going forward in the things that matter to me. I've used the example a lot today throughout this episode of saying maybe you're working full time and building a business and you have a family, or you're part of different social groups that you like to keep up with. This is the average life right now for anyone that is looking to boss up. And so I'm here to tell you that it's okay to have temporary times of hustle, and it is okay to have temporary times of realigning and rebuilding through burnout. Your responsibility is not to not do these things. Your responsibility is to make it through and make them successful. I want to recommend the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. I will be providing this information in the show notes, but I'm sure that if you haven't run across this book recently, it is a bestseller, and I've read it a few times. I may actually pick it up at some point over the summer. And it's just a book that talks about making small sustainable habits. And he also mentions like why your habits haven't worked up until this point. And I think it's a good book to getting you restarted to sustainable habits, and also making it so that you're not always having to change your habits, where it just helps guide you in making things sustainable. Something else that I think is good for you at this point in this realignment and rebuilding through burnout is meditation. Meditation is a great form for many different things, whether you're feeling stressed out or you're just experiencing a different point in your life. You know, if you go on YouTube, if you use apps like the Calm app or Headspace, that is a good way for you to learn to meditate for a few minutes and quiet your mind. And another thing that you can do right now in this realignment, rebuilding period is to channel your creativity. Maybe that means getting back to something simple as coloring or reading, or if you're creative, making sure you take more photos, do more video, editing, putting things on your alignment that'll help you kind of channel your creativity so that you're able to kind of decompress in that way. Alignment is a process. It is not a one-time fix. So in closing down this episode a little bit, I want to remind you that you're not going to one and done this. You're going to do this several times throughout your life. The point is not to avoid this process. The point is to continue to reflect upon your why, to continue to reflect that you're living the life that you want to live, not the life that someone else has assigned to you. So definitely journal, definitely read some books, definitely reflect and move to the next step. Before we end this episode, I want to remind you, if you haven't already, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Let us know your thoughts and how we're doing week to week. And also, I want you to share this episode with someone. Maybe you know someone who's experiencing burnout. Maybe you've recognized some signs in a family member or a friend. And I want you to share this with them. And I want you to let me know. Give me a screenshot of something that you've shared with someone that stuck out to you. And you can get a chance to be featured on our social media platforms. And also, If you're someone who this episode has been shared with, reach out to me on social media, whether that's on my personal account or You the Boss Pod on Instagram or on YouTube. Definitely, I love to hear your thoughts, and definitely also leave us a review. Thank you for listening. Come back again next week for another episode of You the Boss Podcast.